Dear listeners, welcome to Radio GAMeC 30 Years. Our walk through the history of the last 3 decades begins in 1991, a crucial year for the international geopolitical order. It is the year of the Gulf War, authorized by the United States Congress on January 11th and started a few days later with the Allied attack on Iraq, which had invaded Kuwait. It is the largest Allied military action since 1945. For the United States, it is also the first official intervention since the Vietnam War. Due to Saddam Hussein's failure to comply with the international injunctions, a multinational force of 500,000 soldiers, mostly from the US, was set up under the auspices of the United Nations. The Gulf War have caused hundreds of thousands of deaths, especially among the Iraqi civilian population, and extensive ecological damage due to the burning of oil wells. The Gulf War was the first war to be almost entirely covered by television, thus marking a significant change not only for the way it was conducted, with continuous attacks from the sky, but also in the way it was narrated. But the conflict in the Persian Gulf is not the only one in 1991. Africa, for example, is a terrain of bloody internal clashes in Somalia, Eritrea, and Ethiopia. On the European front, Croatia and Slovenia declared independence from Yugoslavia on June 25th, while in Italy there were continuous landings of Albanian refugees. August saw the breakup of the Soviet Union. In a few weeks, Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, Belarus, Moldova, Azerbaijan, and Kyrgyzstan became independent, followed in September by Uzbekistan, Lithuania, and Tajikistan. On December 26, after the resignation of Mikhail Gorbachev, the Supreme Soviet formally dissolved the USSR. But 1991 is not only a year of wars, revolutions, and major political changes, it is also the year in which the first web browser in history was created, an invention that would shortly afterwards radically change the way we communicate, exchange information, make decisions, and conceive of communities and our very existence. Born in Moscow, Olia Lialina is among the best-known participants in the 90s net art scene and early days network-based art pioneer. Her early work had a great impact on recognizing the internet as a medium for artistic expression and storytelling. Her continuous and close attention to internet architecture, net language, and vernacular web has made her an important voice in contemporary art and new media theory. Lialina is credited with funding one of the earliest web galleries, Art Teleportasia. She is co-founder and keeper of 1 terabyte of kilobyte age archive and a professor at Merz Academy in Stuttgart and an animated GIF model.
Hey, 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 hey.
Olia, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
So, Olia, the English scientist Tim Berners-Lee co-invented the World Wide Web with Robert Cailliau in 1989. He wrote the first web browser in 1990 while employed at CERN, but the browser was released to other research institutions only in January 1991, and then to the general public a few months later. So 1991 is generally considered the year of birth of the World Wide Web, even if the web began to actually enter everyday use only 2 or 3 years later. So from your perspective, Olia, what does this date represent in the history of mankind?
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for this question. Actually, 1991, for me personally, it is the year when Soviet Union stopped to exist. August 1991 is remarkable as the month of the failed putsch in the Soviet Union. It is sort of the beginning of the future. And at that moment, I was 20. I studied journalism in Moscow. And I should say that I had no idea not only about the internet or the World Wide Web, but also about the computers in general at that moment. The web really came to my life in 1995 and has changed forever my professional and personal life. As for many others at that time, I am not unique in this. The web, as any digital new media phenomena, is about the future, yeah? And everything on the web is in future tense. But already in 1999, when I started to teach, I became aware about the past, recent past at that time. And I started to pay attention to the dates. And I can tell you that till 2009, the history of the web was counted from 1993, when the first cross-platform web browser Mosaic was released. And people around the globe and all around all possible operating systems started to make their web pages, started actually to build the web. What happened in 2009? That year, CERN decided to celebrate 20 years of the World Wide Web, counting from 1989, when Tim Berners-Lee formulated the proposal for the system. So they paid the due respect to the inventor of the web. And the date 1991 is not acknowledging a person, but a protocol, hypertext transfer protocol, that was released in August 1991. Technically, it is also a big step. So we can count from 1989 because we are grateful to Tim Berners-Lee. It is very, very right to remember that the web was not a corporate invention, as some companies did try to make it in the second part of the 90s. But highlighting this point in the history too much means to celebrate the great mind, not millions of minds who are the World Wide Web. You know, the world knows Tim Berners-Lee's famous "This is for everyone." Yeah, this is how he described his invention himself. But there is a less known statement: if it is not many, there is no sense in it. So let's remember this. And of course, we can count from 1991 to educate the future generations about the protocol and the importance of the protocols in general in the environment where we spend major part of our time. But let's not reduce the history to the release dates of this and that software or protocols. I'm also skeptical about counting from 1991 because it makes us write the history of the web as subdomain of the internet, as one of the protocols. But in my opinion, the web is the best what really happened to the internet, and paradoxically, it is bigger than the internet itself. And this is thanks to us web users who 2 years later, in 1993, started to build the web in the way its inventor didn't expect, and not in a way the protocol really suggested it.
So, Olia, you are for sure one of the artists who, among the first, questioned how art could exist on the web. The debate in the mid of the 90s was wondering, for example, if it were as really possible to develop a specific art form for the web, if there was a peculiar aesthetic, if it still made sense to talk about originals and copy in art, a still open topic, we would say, and what were the channels of content distribution. So what did the web represent for the artists in its early days?
It's an important question. The web is very generous and modest medium. It allowed and still allows to everyone to interpret itself and use it as we wish. Also to the artists, of course. You could and you still can see it as your gallery or your showroom, or as your canvas, or as a museum, or as an archive of your work, or I don't know, as your own mirror, which is so important for the artists. But for people who called themselves net artists, the web was all of that. But first and foremost, I should say, the web was the material for our work. And also, this is maybe not the most important. The web was the inspiration, the main inspiration. It is probably very difficult to comprehend it now when everything is online 24/7. But a quarter of a century ago, it was an inspiration and the excitement. To create things online that would be seen on another computer screen on another continent and would stop to exist if your computer got offline was an incredible inspiration, It was also seen as the future. And in this future, there was no respect to the notion, to the aura of the original you mentioned, the role of the original in the artwork. It was really the past for us, all this discourse about copy and original. And it's really a pity that today artists who proudly call themselves NFT artists are so much doomed by the concept of something being original. Yeah, I really hope that NFT is the agony of this concept. And talking about originals and the objects, for net artists, processes like linking, surfing, connecting, writing and executing algorithms, challenging HTML, challenging HTTP was more important, of course, than objects. Working with invisible. You know that at that time, invisible had a bit different meaning. Invisible, the things that were new, unknown. Yeah. And net artists wanted to show them the beauty of them and maybe only sometimes the danger of them. And today, invisible really means something that is hidden, locked from us, that somebody is spying on us, violating our rights online. And net artists are revealing it. I would say that today to be a net artist is to be rather critical, because there are no many reasons for excitement or optimism. And we, sort of net artists of different generations, we have instruments to uncover and reveal, explain how things really work to the audience that does not really care very often. And by the way, I can add that comment to the internet and the web, invisible and visible. In the 90s, I called myself net artist, and I would get furious if someone would introduce me as a web artist, because it sounded more like a web designer, like someone who just makes pages. And the net art was about something bigger. Yeah. Today, I happily introduce myself as a web artist because the web as a medium is getting invisible itself. Browsers are getting literally invisible or not present. And I don't want it to happen because it is a very empowering medium and we should take care that it continues to exist.
Your early works were characterized by the emphasis placed on the communication circuit rather than on the contents it conveyed, a circuit that aimed to make the user as the real content. There was a strong vocation for experimentation and constitutive reasons for placing those researches in the vein of the artistic avant-garde of the 20th century, always in search of new narrative forms. Can you tell us the spirit that moved some of your early works, such as Anna Karenina Goes to Paradise or The Great Gatsby? What role did the web play in those works?
I think the role was of the web there that it was really present. Yeah, it was dominant in all of this work. It was celebrated, and I should also say that it was a time when artists who just came to the web, who started to work with it, and who didn't grow up with the internet or the World Wide Web or with the computers. We were coming from different backgrounds, from film, from photography, from computer science, I don't know, from everywhere, also from not art related fields and professionals. So it means that we were adapting our previous experiences to the web. We were translating what we knew before into the language of the web. And I think this is what Anna Karenin Goes to Paradise also was, the drama, the story, the world-famous piece of literature, how to tell it in a new environment, in the environment where the stories are told by the search engines to you. Yeah, I now say search engines because at that moment there were many different search engines. This work on Karenin Goes to Paradise, it used Magellan, Yahoo, Alta Vista, all the forgotten search engines at that time that ceased to exist as soon as Google was here. So now we have only one search engine. I should say that this work is still online, but it's sort of an archive of itself. Almost, it's not really functioning. It is rather at this moment a reminder that there was a different landscape, that the web was quite different in 1996 when I made it. And the same about a Great Gatsby. It is an how to tell this story of a great man, how to translate the green light to the web colors, and all these moments of transition, of translation, of trying to talk the language of the web. There is also another work, Agatha Appears, that I made 1 year later in 1997, and it uses all the elements, all the buttons, all the areas of web browser to tell the story. Yes, so there is a location bar, status bar, alternative text to the pictures. Everything is telling the story, and not only the pictures, and the text and the sounds that are inside the browser. I think I was very in love with every element of the web browser, and one could really sense it at that moment, and I hope it's still possible to feel it if you go to this work, if you visit this work today.
With the closure of GeoCities in 1919, 400,000 websites were deleted, and all the memories and the data contained in them were lost, as well as the style and language of those first pages on the web. The data, we can say, are our new memories, and they are more and more numerous and more rapidly obsolescent. So how do you think we are going to conserve them, and what approach should we take?
It could be now a very long and elaborate answer, because this is what I'm dealing with since, since already 2 decades. But the short answer would be, we as the web users should take initiatives and don't think that someone in the cloud is going to preserve our memories or our digital heritage. Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, no one cares about our files and about our memories. But we trust them too much. Actually, I thought also about it already 1 week ago, again, when a call to rescue, to web record Ukrainian museums and libraries' digital collections was released. And a lot of volunteers started to help, to record and to save, to make copies of the digital, of journals, of museum websites, of everything what could be really important, but it's of course not a trivial task. Yeah? And it's a lot of data, it's a lot of files. And somehow to reduce the load, someone suggested not to record what is hosted on Google servers because they won't be bombed, so they are safe. And this is probably and hopefully is absolutely correct and reasonable, but at the same time, let's not forget that for the companies that are hosting our memories, it is just one click or one line of code to erase them. Yep. So nothing what is precious is safe on some server that does not belong to you. Yeah, and we have a lot of examples of it in the online history. And mine and Dragan Espenshit's 1 terabyte of kilobyte H archive deals with the fraction of the first free web hosting service in the history of GeoCities. And it was just deleted by Yahoo one day in 2009. But, and we deal with it, we restore them, we analyze them, we bring them back, we bring the history back to the web users of today. But these were web pages, not profiles on social networks, and profiles means that their interactions with other people, their likes, reposts, responses, and all other processes that happened after you posted a photo or a text remark somewhere. And these interactions, they are something that you want to export, to take back, to archive, to keep, not your original post, not your original tweet. But how to make it without trying to download all their Instagram, as an example? Yeah, well, there are tools. There is a web recorder. There is Conifer. These are tools that are available today to everyone. And when installed, they grab for you everything you see at this moment in front of you in the browser. So every page you clicked, every moment, every fragment of the timeline that you see right now, so you can save it, but not as a screenshot and not as a screencast, but as a live fragment of the web. And this is great that they came to the moment that such tools appear and they get more and more advanced. We just have to tell to ourselves that no one will keep anything for us. We should take an initiative.
With the closure of GeoCities in 2019, 400,000 websites were deleted and all the memories and data contained in them were lost, as well as the style and the language of those first pages on the web. The data, we can say, are our new memories, and they are more and more numerous and more rapidly obsolescent. How do you think are we going to conserve them? What approach should we take?
Yeah, it's very difficult to talk about it, of course. The war started by my country of origin. As you said, it's a shame and it's pain. And it's real tragedy because it's real war. People are being killed. People are sent to kill and to be killed. And after 2 weeks, Ukraine cities are in ruins and Russia is a ruin and economically and existentially. And here in Europe, it's a tragedy. It's very close when we are inside it, difficult to talk about it. And also it's these days, again and again, sort of one looks back in 1991 and thinks about this moment in the history, what could have been done differently, why there are so many wars in Europe, in the post-Soviet world. And you ask me, as an author of My Boyfriend Came Back from the War, the net art piece that I made in 1996, It's actually only some years after Soviet-Afghan war and some years after Gulf War. It was made in the middle of the war in Yugoslavia, in between the first and the second Russian-Chechenian wars. Yeah, and though I never really intended to specify what war I was talking about exactly, and I still think actually, it could apply to any known or maybe even unknown war to me. What I learned from this work myself, from the emails that I was getting from people who discovered my work in 1996 and the years later, is that the war is never over. If you got a chance to survive, you will live with it forever. Yeah, so it's really very difficult times, and the topic and your question, of course. But also concerning, the role of the internet now in this war, it is enormous. We all see it. The war is online, and the internet is part of so-called theater of war, as they say, the theater of military operations. It is even maybe one of its central stages. Big tech companies and their states are showing off and exercising their power there on every side of the conflict, and also the sides that are not involved. Everybody is taking part in the military operations online. And the world is taking part and watching the war online. Yeah, it's, the infinite scrolling, infinite refreshing of timelines that the web became in recent years. It is amplifying everything, but it also sedates.
30 years have therefore passed since the birth of the World Wide Web, an invention that has had a huge impact on our everyday life, from production processes to human relationships. However, today's web is not the same as it was 30 years ago. I think, for example, of the dark web. We know that numerous illicit activities pass through these unindexed and untraceable circuits, but it is also a space for the free circulation of thought in context of control and censorship. I also think, for example, to the cryptocurrencies. How would you summarize the evolution of the World Wide Web in a few words? And what future do you imagine for the web?
It's a very good question. As I said, on the one hand, this 30 years or a bit more or a bit less of the web history, they are filled with so many events and revolutions, and so much has happened. And still, I really can summarize the evolution actually in two words. And it would be evolution from my to me. And, the webmasters, the web makers of the second part of the 90s, they built their homes, worlds, they built their universes. But also outside of intergalactic ambitions, outside, of the web pages with outer space backgrounds, they strongly pushed this concept of something being mine. My took a very strong meaning. My, because I built it. I controlled the presentation of this web page, of my corner of the internet. These are what I put on my page. These are my interests, my competences, my obsessions maybe, and many other things that belong to me. Yeah, this welcome to my homepage sign that we see now as an unprofessional, naive element of the early web, it was in fact a very strong statement about the cyberspace being mine. I'd also say that in 1990, 1 year before the release 1 year before 1991, Tim Berners-Lee thought about alternative names to the World Wide Web. And one of them was MOIR, which in fact was an abbreviation. It was short for Mine of Information. And there was also another idea at that time to call all this system TIM, the information mine. But all these abbreviations actually didn't stand for long, and we got a wonderful World Wide Web. But still, you just wanted to mention that there was this strong, somewhere in the background, from the very beginning, there was this strong idea of the world belonging to people, to people who build it. Yeah, but coming back to how it turned from my to me, this idea was not welcomed by the corporations. That, this growing idea that things can belong to the person who wrote an HTML code or scanned pictures and put them online or collected something was unprofitable and dangerous for the companies. And it was happening already in 97. It was quite clear. And they started to ridicule the people who were making web pages and to try to turn them into other platforms and to try to channel their activities. The smartest and the most effective move, in my opinion, that the industry made is 1999, is to really push people from my to me, to introduce forms that would motivate people to see themselves as the main and the only content of what they do online. And this is what we have right now in an ultimate form. So, but why? Because my was unprofitable and my was dangerous. And me, it is something what is really perfect. Me is cheap. Me is very easy to control. Me is a slave of platforms. And me is just data, and it's data which is closest to metadata. And this makes me just perfect to satisfy advertisers and to sate neural networks with the data. About the future, I hope the web will survive, and I also think that leaving the platforms or building alternatives is not enough at this moment, or not even the biggest deal, I would say. The challenge is to get away from this me, from the idea that you are in the center of your online presence.
It was the voice of Russian artist Olia Lialina on Radio GAMeC 30 Years podcast.